Good evening, I'm Marty McNeely for WGN News. Comic actor John Belushi died today at a rented hotel bungalow in the Hollywood Hills.
Hi, I'm Kurt Loder with an MTV News special report. Kamikaze comic Sam Kinison, a former fundamentalist preacher who turned his personal psychodramas into a controversial, high-volume stage act, was killed in a car crash outside of Needles, California on Friday night.
Vacation in Mexico filming a new movie. He died in his sleep of a heart attack.
Ladies and gentlemen, about an hour, I guess, before we taped tonight's program, we heard very sad and upsetting news. We found out that Chris Farley died.
Now, I'm no believer in curses or the supernatural. You can say I'm kind of beyond a skeptic. I'm a borderline denier, actually. But I do believe in coincidences. And very occasionally, there are a few coincidental things that make me kind of rethink my stance. The film treatment for The Incomparable Atuk is one of those incidents. The Incomparable Atuk is a 1963 Canadian fiction novel by Mordecai Richler. It's the story of an Inuit man who is taken from his home back to Toronto, and immediately becomes corrupted by the power and greed of the city. While it's dated by a lot of its depictions of the Inuit, its anti-corporate narrative still kind of holds up today. The film's potential was finally realized in 1972, when the native Torontonian Norman Jewison purchased the rights. For those not familiar with his work, Norman had a string of hits in the 1970s, adapting musicals to the silver screen. He would go on to direct such Oscar contenders as In the Heat of the Night and Moonstruck.
They call you up there?
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
I'm in love with you.
Snap out of it!
He had a good feeling about the project, and struck a deal with United Artists and Peter Bogdanovich of The Last Picture Show fame to get the film produced and distributed. They just needed their lead actor, someone to really anchor this dark Canadian comedy. So who better than a 5'10", overweight Albanian American?
Well, you gotta suffer if you want to look good, you know?
John Belushi expressed interest immediately upon getting the script in 1982. The whole thing was set: the cast, the crew, the production, and the distribution. The only thing that wasn't accounted for was Belushi's massive drug habit. He had been throwing parties with friends at his hotel suite since rapping on his last film, Neighbors. Robin Williams, Harry Dean Stanton, and Robert De Niro, who had all visited Belushi close to his death, noted a lady with him, Catherine Smith. They were kind of off-put by her, and after taking a bump of coke, left the two together. On March 5th, 1982, Belushi was found dead in his hotel suite at the Chateau Marmont. He had been injecting speedballs, a mixture of cocaine and heroin, and drinking large amounts of alcohol over 24 hours. Smith eventually confessed to assisting him with the injections and was charged with manslaughter.
A man never lied to me in love. A man that made me want to drive my car into a fucking wall!
The Atuk picture broke down after Belushi's death. Without a charismatic lead man to carry the story, they had nothing. It sat for 6 more years until Sam Kinison was approached and accepted the lead role. However, soon after filming started, problems started to arise. Kinison was demanding rewrites to the script and was heard saying that he was promised creative control. The studio chalked it up to him being difficult and sued him for $5.6 million. He continued on with his career until April 10th, 1992, when, 5 days after his wedding, he was heading to a gig and was struck head-on by a drunk 17-year-old in a pickup truck. The truck had skipped the median on Route 95 north of Needles, California, and slammed into Kinison's Trans Am. Carl Labov and Bill Kinison had been driving the equipment van behind his Trans Am and ran over to the wreck. Miraculously, both Sam and his wife were alive, and at least a little mobile. After speaking with Sam, something was immediately wrong. Sam's wife had been wearing her seatbelt and was saved from the life-threatening injuries, while Sam had not. When they impacted, he flew forward, hitting the windshield at highway speed.
And when I got to the car, Sam's body was laying across the middle. And that's when I noticed that just the steering column was there. He had taken out the steering wheel with his chest, and he had hit into the windshield. So he had a little blood on his forehead, a little blood out of his nose, and he was just taking deep breaths. And I said, "Don't move, buddy, don't move." And then he forced himself out of the car and landed on me, and I fell to protect him. and I was on my butt, and he was laid across my arms, and he was looking up, and he started talking to whoever was there that he saw, and he was going, I don't want to die. I don't want to die now. And I said, you're not going to die, man. I got you. And then it dawned on me that he wasn't there, that he was seeing somebody. And he goes, I don't want to die now. But why now? Oh. Okay. He just took off.
That's too much of a good thing. There's everything. John Belushi said when he was trying to convince me to do Saturday Night Live, and he said, and he played Frank Sinatra's New York, New York, and he said, look, New York is Rome.
After Sam left the production, there was clearly something going on with this film. That was twice that it had failed to launch. They needed a less volatile, fat, funny man. Someone with a cleaner track record. John Candy immediately sprung to mind. That cheerful funny man was a hit at the box office more times than not, so he was a perfect fit for how they envisioned the character. They shopped it to his agent, and, as if divinely ordained, on March 4th, 1994, Candy would pass away just as his father did, from a massive heart attack. Candy wasn't as clean as people assumed. While his obesity and binge eating was obvious, his pack-a-day smoking habit and occasional cocaine use wasn't. Clearly something wasn't working with this script. They needed a new narrative, a new change in direction. Maybe a new style of leading man.
Oh my God, they've got Mr. Mike. Does it hurt? Only when I laugh.
The studio sent it to veteran comedy writer and SNL alumni Michael O'Donoghue. Predictably, on November 8, 1994, O'Donoghue would have a stroke and die of cerebral hemorrhage while working on the script.
We're applauding because I'm fat.
Whatever god was up in the sky had sent a clear message to the studio. This film was not to be made. Yet in 1997, during Chris Farley's career height, it was sent to him. He was very receptive, noting that his idol John Belushi had taken a liking to the character, and he always had an amazing nose for good parts. There was now hope that this film could get started and come to fruition. December 18th, 1997, Chris Farley was found dead in his apartment in Chicago after a 4-day drinking and drug binge. Starting at a club in Chicago, Farley hopped from party to party with a number of escorts feeding him the very same speedball, alcohol, insomnia concoction that had killed Belushi. He'd begun mixing cannabis and began having trouble breathing. Heidi Hauser, an escort he had contracted, had been at his apartment on December 17th, as Farley was reaching the end of his binge. She asked him to stop and slow down, but Farley started kicking in the air, finally landing hard on his back and passing out. Heidi took one last picture and walked out the door. He'd be found the next day by his brother John in the exact same position, dead.
The yards are good. How are your kids doing, Phil?
Kids are terrific. Sean is 8 years old now. Bergen's 4.5. 4 3/4, she says.
Have they seen the film yet? Jingle All the Way?
No, I believe they're going to see it this weekend with their mom while I'm doing Saturday Night Live.
That was it. That was the last time United Artists and Jewison attempted any serious casting for Atuk. The film had defied being made. The final supposed victim was Phil Hartman, who was tied to the film in a supporting role. Phil was sleeping after an argument with his wife, Bryn. She then shot him 3 times in the face. Bryn was on Zoloft at the time. She had been mixing it with alcohol, as well as, you guessed it, cocaine. After shooting him, she called her friend to come by and see. Upon arriving, the friend called the police, who escorted him and Phil's children out of the house. Bryn locked herself in the bathroom and shot herself in the head. And there you have it. The story of the movie that not only defied being made, but also made sure that it killed all of its leads. Or was this actually about the actual reason these folks died? Cocaine and alcohol. The one factor that tied them all together. Add to that poor health, bad diet, wild lifestyles, motor vehicles, and firearms, and you really have bad results. Don't blame the quirky Canadian tale about an Inuit man in way over his head in a big city. Blame it on the scourge of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Cocaine. This isn't to mention all the other folks who touched the script and never got caught up in the curse. Chaim Topol, who originally was going to play the lead until the studio tried to get a larger name, is very much alive today. And Robin Williams was asked to play Atuk, but didn't succumb to the curse. His suicide came decades after the proposition. I do find it a bit ironic that a story of a character who's noble and uncorrupted, only to be riddled with vices, was going to be played by all these men who knew vice far, far too well. Thanks for watching.